Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hope. My name is Tammy Lynn Connors. This is my YouTube channel and podcast, helping other people evolve. Today, I have my beautiful friend, Kel Hitt, on here with me today. Hi, Kel. How are you?
I am so good. Thank you for asking.
Good. Now, where are you located?
I am in Central Florida by way of Southwest Florida. I lived in Southwest Florida for 10 years. We've been here for a year. So,
Okay. And how's the weather down there?
girl, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I know it's not cold here.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just telling Kel, I'm in Arizona right now. And yesterday it was 84, beautiful, laid by the pool. I don't know, a cold front came in today. And I know for my friends in Michigan, Ohio, this isn't cold, but it's 50. And I was like, what happened? It is cold today. So anyways, just for everybody that hasn't tuned into Hope, or for those that have, just a reminder of what my mission and vision here is with Hope. What I plan and hope to do every time I do a podcast interview is just to help someone know that they don't struggle alone. I feel like in our world, and especially nowadays, so many people are at home and they feel like their struggle is all by themselves and there's nobody else out there that could understand or relate to them. Now, our struggles might not be the exact same as yours. Kel's struggle is going to be a different struggle than what mine is. But what my hope and mission and vision is that you'll hear her story and you'll get out of bed and walk outside and just take a deep breath and know that you can get through your struggle. You know, we're all here to help each other. And I'm so excited to hear Kel's story because I haven't really heard it. I've been following her for a long time on Facebook and just watching her be a light to the world through the struggles that she's been through, which I know have been very, very strong struggles. You know, it's just and I'm just blessed to be able to finally do this. We've been trying to do this for a little while now, and I always say it's in God's timing. So if you want to just share, you know, a little bit of who Kel is, what you've been through, how you get through your days, and you know, maybe we can give some people some ideas of different ways to get through their struggles.
Sure. So like she said, my name is Kel Hitt. I am 47. I live in Central Florida, about an hour south of Disney. We love where we live. We live someplace we never planned to live. I think that's part of my story as well is, you know, sometimes things don't go the way that we planned, but they end up perfect. And I'm living in that now. My story obviously doesn't start where my story is going to start today, but this is what I'm going to share. And I think that that's something that I also want to share with you as the community. If you think that you're stuck to a story, that your story is just one of your stories, you have a whole lifetime of stories, but sometimes there is just this one that becomes a pivotal turning point in your life. And so that's where I'm going to start with mine. And I'll be transparent, say my true turning point was in 2012. And that is when we relocated my family from Michigan to Florida, absolutely broke. And maybe we can talk about that one on a different one. Okay. But that was where it started. That was my first leap of faith. And it landed us here in 2016 and going about life like normal, right? We're living in paradise. We've moved here from Michigan. Our friends back home are freezing. Like she said, 50 degrees, it's hoodie, sweatpants, scarf weather. We're just so cold. And I started having this pain, and it was, I wasn't really flagged about it in any way, shape, or form. It was kind of a flank pain in my back. And every once in a while it would radiate to my abdomen, and I ignored it for a little bit, but then it was persistent. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to get this checked out because it just wouldn't go away. And I went to every gastroenterologist specialist under the sun. I had the colonoscopy. I did all the things. Every test I did was normal. My CT scans, you know, everything was normal, but my pain was not normal. And it kept going, and it just worse and worse and worse and worse. So finally I thought, I'm going to go to OB. Like OB, maybe this is not related to my gastro. Maybe I'm having some sort of issues with my ovaries or cysts or something that this isn't seeing. Right. So I did some research and I found, hold on. See, I'm not used to interviewing, guys. This is my first podcast. So let me just say, I might have to back up a time or two. But I had not been taking care of myself as far as well women visits. I've been married for decades. I was not at risk for STDs. I was not, my tubes are tied. I wasn't getting pregnant. I am a mother of 3. My kids are all now grown. So at that time, my youngest was 16. I was not concerned with all of the things that we should be concerned about, but I just wasn't. Life was happening. Kids needed this, sports, football, etc. So I needed to completely start this care from scratch. I did not have a provider. I did not have someone that I could go to or had a history with. And I just kind of walked into him that day and said, I don't know what's wrong with me, but if it has anything to do with my female organs, I want them out. Like,
Right.
I don't know what I need to do, but I want to have a hysterectomy. I don't want to feel like this anymore. And he, of course, gave me the whole, Kel, we can't just give you a hysterectomy. Your insurance is not just going to let us do this because you say it. We've got to run a bunch of tests. And so as the testing progress started, my nerves kind of started flaring up a little bit. I started getting worried and asking him questions like, do you think it's cancer? And the answer was always emphatically no. Like, under no circumstances did he think this was cancer related. Everything looked good on that side. But I did come back with HPV markers, which is a indicator for, or it progresses into cervical cancer at some point, which means I had been carrying these markers probably since I was 16 years old. And at that point, now I'm 40. So we start doing the tests. They get more and more invasive as we go. My birthday comes around. It's January 22nd. I turn 40. I'm sitting there thinking, like, I am on the eve. This is when life changes, right? When you turn 40, everything is going to change. And it did. We went to the doctor on my birthday, and he told us at that point that my tests were clear and I didn't have cancer. We had a trip planned to go to New York to visit my sister. We hopped on a plane. We were so excited. We were high-fiving, like, no cancer, so happy.
Right.
We came back from that trip. I had one more test to do, and that was a hysteroscopy. And while I was on the table, he said, when was the last time you had a pap smear? And I knew, like, you didn't even have to say anything else to me. It was just that one question, because he knew, right? He knew my history. He knew where we were. He knew what we were working with. But it was kind of like a setback for him. And so I just kind of sat there thinking, oh my gosh, something is coming. And so they did the biopsies, and they said, we'll call you in 7 to 10 days to come in for your follow-up. It was 24, 36 hours at max. I got the call, we need you to come in. You know that's never good. My husband was working 40, 50 hours a week. He couldn't just take time off on a drop of a dime. So I called my daughter. She was in college. She took the day off school. So she went with me to go sit in this appointment and just sit there and have that doctor look at you and say, after months, I mean, we've been testing for months of saying no cancer, I'm positive it's not cancer, to look at me and say, you have cancer, it is aggressive. We are referring you to the best oncologist here. And, they're probably going to fast track you. I went from my birthday being cancer-free to February 3rd, February 3rd, being told that it was aggressive, to sitting in the oncologist's seat on February 12th and scheduling my complete hysterectomy on February 25th. It was so incredibly fast. You couldn't even process or really wrap your brain around what was happening, except for that you wanted it out. I just wanted to be done. And my doctor was very, very optimistic at that. My oncologist was very optimistic that this surgery, everything would be contained. Did not believe that it had traveled to my lymph nodes, that there was going to be no other activity once we got it out, maybe chemo, radiation, but hope maybe not. We did the surgery. Surgery went great. All margins were clear. He was confident of complete success. We decided to leave my ovaries because of my age. He didn't want to send me into instant onset menopause. So we left those. And about 6 months later, I started having pain again. So I went back. That was in February. So I went back about August. And he said, I think maybe let's just take the ovaries. Obviously, we should have took them in the first place. We tried to be, we tried to not have to do it, but let's do it. So I had surgery number 2. They took my ovaries. From there, I had 2 rounds of chemo, 1 round of radiation. But the whole chemo story was a story in itself, because this was where my family completely started to drown. Because I had excellent insurance. It had covered everything, but the medication that the doctor wanted me to try was kind of on a trial basis. It wasn't fully approved. My insurance wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It was the only thing that they wanted to do. And it was going to cost us about $40,000. And when the other story, the 2012 to 2016 story, we're broke. Okay. My husband is working 50 hours a week, and now we have to do this. So I just put it in my head, whatever this will be, whatever God's will is, like, I can't do this. I did not want to do a GoFundMe, nothing, no problem with GoFundMe's. It was just in my head at that moment.
Right.
It was so much so fast that I could not see, like, suddenly this is where we are. And my husband came home from work and he said, I talked to my job. They're going to let me work double, triple overtime as much as I want. I'm going to take a loan on my 401k. We also got on a payment plan for this procedure. Like, everything just, it came together in a way that I was able to have this. And not only did I have to do one round, but I had to do 2 back-to-back rounds of this. And it was a lot. I mean, even if we didn't have to pay that, even if we didn't have to pull in these 80 hours, I mean, this was just a lot. And my youngest was 16. My middle child was almost 18. And my oldest, like I said, she was at college, and we just had so much life.
Oh.
Everything's flashing, right? Like, I'm not going to see this one graduate. I'm not going to see this one graduate. I'm not going to see her graduate college. I'm never going to meet my grandchildren. Every thought, it happens. There's no stopping it. No matter how strong of a person you are, you're not going to stop those thoughts. We did the chemo. We sacrificed our marriage. We sacrificed our time. We sacrificed hair. We sacrificed literally everything that we could do. And in that time, though, is when we did find faith. I mean, I will tell you, faith became such a strong part. The day that I was diagnosed with cancer, literally the day, my husband said, I think maybe we should find a church. And that was a whole nother turning point in our journey of just meeting people who just loved us so well. Like, they were part of what got us through all this, our prayer circles, our pastoral team, all of these people who just for 18 months of just a complete roller coaster. And there started to be a great turning point. You know, I started feeling better, and it was like, hallelujah. My PET scans were clear. And I just knew that God had put me in this place to walk this journey, like, there had to be a reason. And so for me, the reason that, you know, I don't know if all cancer patients do this, but we assign something to say this was worth it, right? Like, if I had to go through this happening made it worth it. And so for me at that time, what made it worth it was when we got back in church and the whole faith thing. And I watched my husband get baptized. I watched my son get baptized. I watched my niece stand up and say yes to Jesus. And she waited till I wasn't in the hospital. It was like, if I had to walk through all of that for this to happen, I would have done it a million times over. And that was the narrative that I just kept painting to get through where we were. Then now we're at 2018 and I'm feeling better. Well, I was feeling better. My PET scans were clear and I started to have a pain again. And this time I didn't tell anybody I had pain because I was scared. And I was so frightful that the cancer was back. I was so frightful, you know, how we would deal with this, how I could go through this again. There was nothing in my head that could have been anything but cancer, right? Like, this is it. So I sat on it for quite a while and I didn't tell anybody. And when I say quite a while, I mean months. It almost ended up being an entire year of, it wasn't constant pain. So it was severe pain, no pain, severe pain, no pain, minor pain, a little pain, but in the same spots, you know, lower back, front abdomen. And I just knew I don't even have any of these parts anymore. So if this is what this is, we've got a problem. In September of 2019, after, you know, months and months of this, and now my husband's realizing something is wrong. I ended up at ER. I spiked a low-grade fever one night, and that alarmed me more than anything else. I thought, okay, something is really happening. You're not sick, but you're in excruciating pain. Now you have a fever, you're hot, you're cold. And he had already went to work. So I woke my son up and I said, you know, can you drive me over to ER and drop me off on your way to school? I'm fine. Don't stress out, because this is trauma now for my whole family. Everything is a worry. If I stub my toe, we're worried.
Right.
So he dropped me off at ER and went to school and did not want to, but I made him. I was like, I'll still be here. If something's wrong when you get out of school, we'll figure it out. But there's no reason for you to sit here. I was there. They started running some tests. They came in the room and said, it's your gallbladder. We need to get you back for immediate surgery and get your gallbladder out. And I just kind of looked at her. And if I could tell you, Tammy, I was probably the happiest person on the planet to ever hear that they had to have gallbladder surgery. that was me, because I was like, get the sucker out. Like, if it's
Right.
not cancer, I don't care. You
Right.
want my appendix too while we're there?
Right.
I don't
Right.
care if it's not cancer. I was so happy, and also on morphine because ER, so I'm not feeling no pain. And I called my husband at work and I said, they want me to go back for surgery. They're saying it's going to be about 2.5, 3 hours. He worked about 90 minutes from where I went from the hospital. So he said, well, I'm going to leave work. Hopefully, he wanted to try to catch me. So he walked in right as they're wheeling me off. He gave me the goodbye kiss, and I was on my happy, they call it the 6-pack when they give you the IV and you're just like in la la happy land.
Yeah.
And I kissed him goodbye. And I woke up from surgery, and my mom was there, and my husband was there. Everything's fine. Everything's normal. My husband said surgery, the doctor came in, he talked to me, everything went good. They did put a drain in just because they wanted to monitor some inflammation, but the drain should come out tomorrow. And, cool. If my husband tells a story, it's a little different. The doctor came in the room, shook his hand, had an entire conversation about how the surgery went, and it was great. And we never saw that surgeon again. The next day, I had a full medical team, like, kind of rushed my room. All of my tests were like going in the toilet. Something was seriously wrong. Nobody knew what was wrong. They had pulled my op reports. There was nothing in my op report stating that anything had happened. They were starting to try to figure out, piece it together, what had happened. They had me doing all of these different surgeries that I don't remember a lot of, because I was so medicated through it that I remember it, but very lucidly, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I remember like being fine and then laying on a table where they had done the scope, and I was like kind of awake, but they had me sedated, and I kept saying, how much longer do I need to lay here? How much longer? And they were like, just 2 more hours. And I was thinking, how am I going to lay here for 2 hours? It just, it was very surreal and very fast, because we went from that to, they came in the room and said, we have a major problem. We need to send you by trauma to Tampa General.
Oh my
We are not equipped to handle what has happened. We aren't even really sure what happened, and we need to get you in the hands of the best medical team possible that can go through and review all your stuff and take your scans. They put me in an ambulance. They trauma transferred me about 2 hours to Tampa. And I walked right into the trauma team there, and they were amazing. I cannot talk enough good about the medical team at Tampa General Hospital, from the trauma to the liver team, but we'll get to that in a minute. But I started with trauma, and they figured out the problem and realized that this doctor who had done my surgery had cut my biliary tree, completely sliced it, and completely sliced it, and didn't tell anybody. My op notes didn't match where it said that there were no staples, no sutures. They found like 24 sutures in the scans that they couldn't figure out. So he was probably trying to fix something.
Oh my
But
goodness.
didn't note any of these things, nor did any of the medical staff in the room who would have known what happened.
Right.
There was no notes. There was no existence of any of these staples, these surgical staples, anywhere in my op notes. I was free flowing bile through my body.
Yeah.
There was nowhere for it to go. I was rapidly jaundicing. They couldn't get it under control. This is not a normal case. There are a few cases like this that have happened in the United States. Normally what they do is they go in and they put you in with a surgical or radiation intervention team. And the radiation intervention team goes in and they use all of these high-tech things to like guide, while you're under, I don't even know. I really don't know. I was the patient on the table, but they put this wire through and they guide it so that they can put a drain into your liver and into other things so the drains can catch this bile. But he had hurt me so bad, and the only word I can use is hurt, injured. He had broken me so badly that they couldn't do this, and not being able to do it is not normal. And so they would take me in, and this was always under aesthetic, but they would lay me on my side and they would take this wire and they would fish this wire through my side up into whatever, and just try to get in there so they could hook this. It was very, very, it was a very painful procedure every time that they did it. And I had to have this done 9 times over a course of 3 weeks. Every time was a failure. Every time it failed, the prognosis got weaker and weaker and weaker. I was transferred at one point to another hospital where there was a specialist in this. So I was transferred another 45 minutes back towards my house, but the hospital really wasn't equipped for what I needed, but the specialist was there.
Mm.
They attempted it while I was at that hospital after 3 attempts there. One of my 3 failed attempts was on a Sunday. They called a team in and said, it is emergent. We have to do it today. We cannot wait. We don't have a surgical team. They actually had me sign off on a waiver stating that my RN could provide my anesthesia because they couldn't get an anesthesiologist in that day, but it was so imperative that this had to be done that like I literally had to sign rights away for them to try it, and then woke up and found out that it failed.
Ugh.
And that they had made such a big scene about how important it was to do this today. So knowing that again, it failed. And the next day I woke up and listen, I'm telling you that I woke up and the doctor came in, the specialist said, you know, Kel, we really need to give your body a break for a while. And I'm going to admit you into our long-term care so that you can heal and rehabilitate. Basically just signing off on me, right? Because not saying we can't fix you, but really saying we can't fix you. We don't know what to do. But I'll tell you, I was so happy. Like I was delusional. I stayed medicated this entire process. And in my head at that time, I was so happy because I was like, I can go back, I can work, right? Like if they put me in there, I'll have my phone, I can work because I work from my phone.
Right.
And so my brain just automatically turned into this mechanism of this protection mechanism. Not that you're dying, but that they're not gonna poke at you anymore. They're not gonna prod you. You're gonna be able to rest and relax, and you can talk to people. And in hindsight, I hear the delusionist in it, but I didn't get it. They had wrote the papers up to transfer me into this care, and the trauma surgeon at Tampa General received the notes, and he said, absolutely not. She's coming back here. So before they could get me over there, I found out I'm headed back to Tampa General.
Jeez.
And they got me there, and he said, I want you to go home for 3 or 4 days. I want you to be with your family. I want you to spend time. I just want you to get a break from the hospital. Mind you, I'm still, everything's a mess, but I just wasn't okay. I really, really wasn't okay. And so I went home. I don't think it was 3 or 4 days. I think it was about 2. And then my husband and my mom drove me back to Tampa General for the procedure. So they basically brought me back. I went through check-in for the procedure, and then I would be admitted after the procedure was done. That procedure failed. Finally, 2 more later, they were able to place these drains. And I remember waking up and then Jerry saying, they got the drains, they got them in. I didn't know what I looked like. And so at that time you were following me and you were seeing things like I was going Facebook Live because that was my job.
Yeah.
I was still presenting myself. I was trying to make things as normal as possible for people watching me in a situation that was not normal, but I didn't know anything because I was very, very loopy. I woke up, they told me that, and within 10 minutes of them having the conversation with us and saying that they were able to place the drains, they said the liver transplant team will be in to see you tomorrow.
Oh.
And I had a healthy liver.
Right.
I had no liver issues. So as a result of what had happened, it had completely destroyed my liver. And the liver transplant team came in to see me. Again, she is amazing. I'll never say enough about this team at this hospital. But she brought me in. She went over, possibilities. Maybe you're going to have maybe we'll have to do a transplant. We don't want to do a transplant. We might need to have your family do panels to see who is a transplant match. If anybody is as a first resort. But in the meantime, I do want to do this surgery. It's called a hepatojejunostomy. It's very, very rare. Only a handful of people have had it. It's very, very dicey. We are going to cut you reverse hockey stick, meaning basically from here all the way down my abdomen, take an L, open, reroute your intestines, take your liver, cut a huge portion of your liver out, place glue in your liver so it can't regenerate because your liver is the only organ that will regenerate.
Right.
And mine cannot, mine never will. So it's basically the size of a walnut and it will never grow any bigger because they have made it that way. I listened to her. We cried a lot. I had to wait 6 to 12 weeks of having these drains in before they could do the surgery, because I had to be healthy enough and parts of my organs had to be healthy enough to be able to do it, and I was not. So my surgery was scheduled for November. So remember, my accident September. November is my surgery. I had the surgery. It was hands down one of the hardest. I mean, when you hear you have cancer and you think that's the worst thing that can ever happen to you, for me, cancer was terrible. Cancer took my breath away. Cancer was definitely a rock bottom for me. But the worst thing that happened to me was recovering from this surgery. I had woke up thinking, once I had the surgery and I went through this huge invasive procedure, that not only would that happen, but my drains would be gone, only to wake up and have all of this and still have these drain bags, which are gross. If I'm sure most of you have never seen them, they're about this big. They hang off of your side. I had 2 of them and they would fill every 2 hours. That's how much bile our body produces. So every 2 hours, we would have to go in, drain them, wait 2 hours. My stomach, now I have these stomach sutures. These things would just open up at will, just out of nowhere. You're in bed and I started having panic attacks and going through trauma because I would be sleeping and I would wake up wet. I didn't know what I was wet from. I didn't know if I had a drain leaking. I didn't know if my stomach had an issue. I didn't know if I was broken, if now my, something was wrong. And this was happening over and over and over again, these little things that just kept being bigger things. And then in the midst of it, Christmas came and I'm still healing and I still have drains. And then I went septic. And I, again, minimized, if you catch a character flaw with me, I again minimize these symptoms because I'm just sick. I don't want anybody to know. It's Christmas. My family's already went through all this stuff. I don't want to do this some more. So the day after Christmas, my husband drove me to Tampa because, again, I'm freezing, I'm sweating, I'm freezing, I'm sweating. And I was immediately admitted. And I ended up spending the next 7 days in the hospital because they couldn't get. So now I've spent Thanksgiving in the hospital. I've spent Halloween in the hospital. Now I'm in Christmas in the hospital. And now I get to watch the ball drop on Christmas Eve in the hospital. I did wake up January 1st in the hospital and they came in the room and they said, you know what, we're going to attempt to remove your drains. And that was one of the highlight happiness of my life. And they just kind of, after all those months of having it, they pulled those things out. But then I went into my own trauma because now I thought, where's it going to go? What if it's not working? There was still stuff going in the bags when they took the bags out. Right. Where does this go? And, I have my husband telling me, they know what they're doing. They wouldn't do this if they didn't. Obviously there's a certain amount of this, something, right? There's something. So I went through that recovery, which was extraordinarily hard. Most painful thing I've ever experienced in my life. I had to have my family doing things that you would never expect your family would have to do. My husband is literally packing wounds in my abdomen and he's not a nurse. He's not trained to do this. I have a son my youngest son, he just graduated with his RN license and he's got that. So I'm excited. And this came from what he watched me walk through, but he was in medical academy at high school at the time. And he was coming in and changing my dressings and my goodness, just my whole family. My mom took FMLA to stay home with me during recovery because my husband was just nonstop, not working. And we couldn't do that. So she was helping me. It was an all hands on deck thing to get through it. And I finally did. I started feeling better probably about February, March of where are we now? We're in 2020. Are we in 2020? No, 2019. So I started feeling better and people kept saying to me, have you thought about suing the hospital? And I had not. Like, when you're in the middle of all that, your family is thinking it, your friends are thinking it, you're not thinking it. And I really, really didn't want to get into any type of litigation. This is not my character. And I don't even know what that means. Not that there's bad character, but I'm just kindness and love and I'm calm. And I'm not one of those people. It's like, you hit my car, I'm going to sue you. That's my husband, not me. Right. So, I started reaching out to different people just to get opinions, because so many people were coming to me and saying, if you don't do something, this doctor could do this again. And that was the part that got me, not like the financial gains of it, but like, he could do this again. So when I tell you he never stepped foot in my hospital room, he did my surgery, he went home, and he didn't come back to work. He just didn't come back. And I received a letter. It was a mass letter from the hospital about 30 days after my surgery that anyone who was his patient received, saying that he was no longer with the hospital, no longer affiliated with the hospital. He had resigned. And that was a red flag. They didn't say they fired him. None of these things. Well, once he was done working there, he went and opened up his own practice doing sclerotherapy, vein therapy, Botox, like different things that were not surgery. And I knew he was still working on people, but he was doing it under a whole different means of this. So I reached out to several lawyers, and one got back with me and he said, I think you have a strong case. Let's come in. Let's talk about it. Let's get your medical records. Let's take a look. And this is where like everything kind of took a really hard left turn for me, because I learned a lot. And I realized what I had to go through in this was, if I had to give it a reason, was so I could educate people on sovereign immunity and their own medical health and what they sign when they go in for routine surgery or non-routine surgery for anything. The documents that you sign, you don't know what they are. You're just
signing, right?
Just like accepting cookies, right? We accept the cookies, we accept the updates to everything. We don't read them. We just know we have to sign them.
Right.
And I sat down with this lawyer. He said, you have an amazing case. You should become a multimillionaire from this case. However, in the state of Florida, several hospitals are run under a monopoly system, and they are protected by what is called sovereign immunity. And it's basically a immunity given to these facilities because they are so large that protect them in the event of anything. They're literally protected by the government. So like sovereign immunity goes all the way back to like England, king, queen, monarchies, all the things where they grant special privileges to different types of people to keep them immune. They cannot do any wrong. So even though I almost died, even though I went through months and months of this, even though all of these things happened, he said, the most that you can get as a result of this is $250,000. And then we would need to take 30,000, or not 30,000, 30%. And if you want us to move further with this, we can. We just need you to have the understanding that if you want to, you can take it further. You know, if they're going to offer you a settlement, it's always going to happen. If you want to say no to that and take it further to the court, you can always take it to a jury, and you can see if a jury thinks that it's worth more than what you say. But 9 times out of 10, it's not going to get there because the government has to approve it to go to court. So it's not just like I can say, no, I want it to go to court. I want it to go there.
Right.
They have to decide that they're going to side not on the side of sovereign immunity. And it almost never happens. So he was basically saying, if that is your intent, you will die on the ashes. Like it just won't go anywhere. So if you're okay with us fighting for up to 250,000 and just to get some presence to this and to get this doctor to know that you didn't just walk away from this, and we want to support this, but it will never be. And I said, well, absolutely, let's go forward with it. In hindsight, I wish I hadn't. And so I'll explain that. But we went through the process and it became very, very messy. And the hospital was where I thought there would be a little bit of kindness or understanding or acceptance, especially given the fact that he never came back to work after that day.
Right.
And my op notes were what they were, that they would just say, you know what, let's do a little bit better. But they didn't. And they came back and they said, we'll give you $125,000. And that's it. Like 125, we're done. And I said no. And then they came back and said, we'll give you 170,000. And I said no. And then after the 170, they came back and said they were not going to counter. So I would either take the 170 or I could attempt to take it further to the court if I chose to, but that was the end. So I wrote a letter. And I was very passionate in my letter about, if this was your wife, your mother, your daughter, your son, I understand that you are a legal team, and I understand that you have to do, like, it is your job to not give money. but this was major. And I just would ask you to take a look at that on the basis of this. And they came back and said, no, we'll give you 175. And so my lawyer said they will not, this is it. This is the end of the road. So if you want to take the 175 and just call it a day, like, let's do this. We can't tell you to do it, but we can tell you that it's probably not going to get better than this from here. So we talked about it, we prayed about it, and we said, okay, well, let's do that. At that moment that my lawyer went in to let them know that we were going to go ahead and accept the 175, my insurance company, my medical insurance company, put a hold on any funds that I would receive from my lawsuit to recoup what they had paid into my care. And
Oh
I
my
didn't even know
goodness.
that existed. I didn't know that they could put a lien on anything that you earn as a result of a lawsuit to recover their own
Oh my
expenses.
goodness.
So if I didn't sue, I wouldn't have ever had to pay a penny for my medical services because my insurance covered it and that's what it's there for. But
Right.
because I sued, they could take as much of it as they wanted. So I'm already 175. I'm already down 30% because I have to give it to my lawyer. And now my insurance company has put a lien on up to $250,000.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
So we called the insurance company. We went through all the stuff with them. Didn't really go very far. My lawyer came back and said, we're going to negotiate with them. We're going to talk to them about the sovereign immunity. We're going to tell them where we're at. We're going to have the negotiations. They ended up coming back and saying, okay. And the end settlement for me ended up being $48,000 net to me as a result of what happened to me. So would I have done it again? Absolutely not. The doctor had no recourse, still has his practice. The hospital took no responsibility for anything. My lawyer and my health insurance got more between the split that they got than we got. And then, you know, the only positive to it is you don't have to pay tax on lawsuit, but like 48,000 for what we just, that didn't even pay for my chemo
right.
that my husband had went through. It was just like one slap in the face after another slap in the face. But I'll tell you, I built up this resiliency, and I don't know if you call it an alter ego, and I don't know what to do it, but you know, when I was first diagnosed with cancer, people would say things to me like, you've got this. And I would get so angry because I didn't, right? I had zero control over what was happening to me. I wasn't training to run a 5K and I got this, or training, like I couldn't train for this. I didn't got this.
Right.
And as you know, people would say, fight like a girl, because that's what they say.
Right.
And somewhere in there, I was like, well, my last name is Hitt, so we're going to be Hit Like a Girl, right? So I started a hashtag and it became like a persona for me. And I feel like Hit Like a Girl really did carry me from 2016 until last year almost. Like it was a protection mechanism for me that, you know, it just kind of came through and it worked. And now it's 2023. I can't believe that I blinked and 7 years and went by since all of this has started.
Wow.
It feels like yesterday. I still wake up. I still have night sweats. I panic over every pain. But, you know, I have had the best things happen to me in my life post surgery. And it didn't come because I had a lawsuit or I had money. It became, you know, I started working harder. I changed up what I did a little bit. And I started doing things that felt good for me. And if I don't end this on anything else in hope, it's just that I realized that I had not been living my own life for me. I wasn't doing things that made Kel happy. I've always been a people pleaser my entire life. I've always wanted to make sure this person had that or this person had that. And so in the industry that I'm in, we're in, you know, there's a big talk about, you know, finding your why. Well, after you almost die, kind of finding your why becomes a little bit more even bigger, bigger than, you know, when you're doing it for your career to keep pushing you along. And I realized like, I'm not living where I would like to live. I don't have, you know, things that were not important previously. It was like, if I'm going to have a house, I'm going to have a sunset. It doesn't matter what the house is, but why am I not facing the sunset? I want a house with a sunset. I want all these things. But then I kept saying, I don't have joy. No matter what I did, I couldn't get joy. And it was really, really just kicking me over and over again. Like, I have no joy. I have no joy. And I started saying it to everybody I would talk to. Like, I everything is going for me. You know, my business is great. Finances are great. Life is great. I retired my husband with my business in 2021, right after the pandemic. I brought him home. So after, I mean, that's like a huge glory story. After everything
Sure.
he walked to the fire for me, he's now home full time with me. But now what? Just things people don't tell you that suddenly when you've worked your whole entire life and had a career and a purpose and you knew where to show up every day and what your job was going to be. And now you have like, there's no directions. And so
Mm,
we just walked in this whole season of, we need to stop and breathe because neither one of us knew what truly gave us joy. And somewhere along the lines of everything walking out, we'd stopped doing the things that we enjoyed. And so we started doing more traveling, thoughtful traveling, you know, memories traveling, concerts, memories, collecting moments and time instead of things. I'm a maximalist, so don't pretend like I'm not pretending like I don't buy things because I like things, but like I don't care about them. You know, I
right.
would rather, you know, I'm a Swiftie. I would rather spend ridiculous money to go to a Taylor Swift concert than, you know, buy shoes. And there's nothing wrong with buying shoes. Everybody has a thing. But for
Right.
me, my thing is memories and moments because they can be taken away so quickly.
Mm,
And I'm
yes.
hyper aware of that every single day and grateful and just trying to find the joy in every day in my home, you know, in how my space fits me and how I can be somewhere that I don't want to leave and want to go travel because I just love being home so much. Um, my kids have through this thing become my absolute best friends in the entire world, my confidants. They know, you know, everything. They've been a part of every season and now they're all adults. I didn't even know
Yeah.
if I was going to see them graduate.
Mm.
And my youngest is 23 and got engaged last week. And I'm
Oh,
pretty dang sure I'm going to see him get married. So, like, another check, right?
right.
These things that were so important to me and I was so devastated about. I've just watched this full 360 thing go around, but they really affected my marriage. They affected my home life. They affected me personally and physically. My anatomy is nothing like it is. My having a walnut liver, like I can have a glass of champagne with you, but if I have two, I'm passing out and
Right.
you know, I'm drunk. I can't do this. I've had a lot of life changes in every way that you can imagine. But at the end of the day, I'm just incredibly grateful. And I think that that's what grounds me in where we are today and just
Yeah.
the hope that I have and how I can pay this forward, how I can pour into other people because I know where I was in my headspace and we don't even have to put it to cancer or the
Right.
surgery. I went through some really dark points and you probably have too, or you wouldn't have made this podcast.
Right.
Like rock bottom, I swear rock bottom is where I solidly started to regrow and rebloom
Mhm.
and figure out who I was and what I liked and what I wanted to wear and how I wore my hair and if I wanted to wear makeup or not, because I'm not necessarily a makeup girl. But
Right.
like there's just all of these things that I'm growing into my skin. And again, another thing that I'm not against is like any type of plastic, anything or injectables. But listen, I almost died and I want to see my wrinkles.
Right.
I
Right.
want to see these lines. Like I want to know that I made them.
Yes.
And, you know, there was a time I didn't know if my face would grow older or any of those things. These are the things that I really, really think about all the time. I'm like, is that a gray hair? And I'm like, oh my God, it's a gray hair. I'm so excited. Um,
Oh, trust me.
I, I'm I'm just in awe and I don't know what's going to come of anything. And like I said, this doctor still has his practice, he still has his license and he's still out treating people, but sovereign immunity is something that I hope you all take some time and read about, learn about your
Wow.
own hospitals, learn about your own environment, where you are, if your hospital is covered by sovereign immunity. These are things that if you're going to go in for major surgeries, minor surgeries, they're just
Yeah.
things to be aware of because I was the most excited girl in the world to have gallbladder surgery that day.
Yeah.
It was not cancer. Like I was take it all.
Right.
And they did, they took it all.
Oh,
Um, and I couldn't protect myself and nobody could protect me. You know, there was nothing my husband could do. There was nothing my family could do. This was literally out there just floating. And it's a case all over the world, especially now that, you know, big medical systems are becoming monopolies in a lot of towns. I mean, even if you want to go to a family doctor, they are governed by XYZ hospital. You know, it's not your family doctor down the street anymore.
right.
Everybody is under an umbrella of a medical system in your town. And when that happens, a lot of them are protected by sovereign immunity, and that doesn't protect you. So just being aware of your rights and what you're walking into and what you sign can just be the difference in everything. And being
Wow.
so aware of your own body and your own aches and pains. And listen, if you are like me and you haven't gone and had a pap smear or a well women check because you don't need to, because you're monotonous and you've been married forever and you're busy and your kids need things, do it anyway.
Mhm.
Because I wish that I would have been doing it, all along. I would have caught
Right.
this. Who knows how long I was walking around with cancer.
Right.
Could have been a week, could have been a year, could have been 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no idea. All I know is when my pain started. And
Mhm.
cervical cancer presents usually with no pain, no symptoms. So a
Mm.
lot of people who have cervical cancer will never even know that they have it until it's
So
so
like,
aggressive that
yeah.
it's too late.
Yeah.
I'm just grateful.
Wow. Your story is like, I could usually, when I'm interviewing people, I'll like stop and interject. I couldn't even stop and interject with your story. My goodness gracious, lady. It
I
is
know.
what you went through for 7 years, 8 years, still going through, right? Is just
Pretty much in my
incredible.
head, I'm still going through it.
Yes. Well, like you said, you still wake up in that panic, like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. And I kept thinking in my head when you said about going in for that gallbladder surgery and how you're like, yes, gallbladder surgery, easy peasy, right?
Mhm.
Go ahead. Like you said, take my appendix too. And then to come out, and I couldn't help but thinking of my nephew who had, he had his colon removed in 2018. He had ulcerative pancreatitis and had to have his entire colon removed. And he ended up getting a J pouch, but in probably a 15-month time, he went through 9 major surgeries. And I remember the surgery where because I was going to ask you about becoming septic, because they had went in and they had to dilate his J pouch area so he could, go to the restroom and stuff. Well, they nicked it. So the bowels were coming out into his body. So he ended up being septic. And I remember my mom being septic. And so that was the first thing when you said about the cut that I thought about was the septic part, but that didn't come till after you had the drain tubes in. And when you were talking about the bile. So as a recovering alcoholic, through my drinking career, as I called it, that's what I vomited, was continuous yellow bile. And so just to imagine that being on your side and, waking up and like you said, the sutures, just all of the mental stuff. I mean, I get the physical pain. I feel like we can always get through the physical pain some way or another. It's this up here, the mental part of all of it. And just for you, like waking up going, my gosh, the tubes, it failed again. It failed again. Like, am I ever going to get any way better? And for you to be able to sit here today and then talk about finding joy, because, I feel like so many people out here, even me sometimes, I just heard Brene Brown. Do you know who Brene Brown is? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So I just like Brene Brown, if you guys don't know, man, she is like, she's a coach, she's a speaker, she does all these things. And she said the other day on an interview with Lewis House, how alone she feels. Like she has all of this stuff, but she just can't find that joy and she feels so alone. And I was like, man, I can relate to that sometimes. And it is.
And I'm surrounded by people.
Right. All
I'm
the
alone.
time. Right. And people that like you just, I mean, for your marriage to still be intact through all of that, I mean, that's a lot for you, for your husband, kudos to your husband too, because I can't even imagine what he was going through. And I feel like we have a lot of the same personality with the caring and loving and put ourselves over here or over here because we got to take care of everything over here. And then having to let people come in and completely take care of us. Like you were talking about, your wounds and all of that, just wow, what a story of hope you have, and if follow her on Facebook, Kel Hitt. I mean, I'm telling you guys, I'll put her name on here and stuff, but you're an incredible, amazing woman. And that was the thing. I was just like been following you and being in complete awe of your journey and just you getting through it and keeping your upbeat, positive, being the light to the world. There's so many people that's why I do this. Pardon?
So there's a lot of dark out here.
Oh yeah, there is a lot of dark, and that's why I feel like God always puts me towards the people that are the light in the world, just so that we can share the light and be the brighter light to the world. You know, there's a lot of light out here too. We just need to be the ones to express it. And Trent Shelton, who's one of my favorite speakers, says our transparency will lead to someone else's transformation. And that's something that I've held on to for a long time. By us sharing our transparency of our struggle that we went through can give somebody else the hope that they can get through it. So, yeah. You're an amazing, amazing, amazing lady. You know, thank you for getting on here with me. Like I said, we've been trying this for a long time, and I know there's another story from Kel Hitt that we'll do that another day, but I really appreciate you getting on Hope. Is there anything that you want to share with everybody before we end it up?
When I tell you to advocate for your own self, your own body, your own medical stuff, I want you to hear this through the voice of someone who is literally paranoid and petrified equally of doctors now. I am afraid to walk into a doctor's office. I am afraid to sit at a doctor's table. I am afraid to go in for a routine physical, but I will never not do it again. So be aware of your own physical health, your mental health, your mindset. And thank you so much, Tammy. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here, for being persistent and patient with me as I walked through my own stuff, because I had my own internal block even in doing this. And, you know, I made a Facebook post about it. And I think you read it, but, you know, when your story is about being a victim, it is very, very heavy. And I know that it's not about being a victim and it's about overcoming and hope. But when you are the person, sometimes it feels like a victim story. And so I needed to really, really sit with myself in this and know that this was something that I needed to put out on a bigger platform and just make more people aware of, because I wish somebody would have done that for me.
Yes, and we appreciate you doing that for us. So, well, I hope you have a fabulous day. I know
Thank
you have
you, you
another
too.
interview later today, so that's
I
exciting.
do.
So I'm super excited to hear that one too. And I appreciate you getting on here, Kel. And everybody, I appreciate you for tuning into Hope. Like I said, you know, you're going to hear Kel's story, my story, AJ's story, Jamie's story, somebody's story. And I hope when you hear those stories, you know that you can get through it. I promise you. You know, I talk about faith all the time. You know, I'm a believer and I say that, and it's whatever your faith is, your universe, whatever it is you believe, grab onto that and have that, and know that there's people out here that will help you get through your struggles. You guys all have an amazing day and have a blessed Easter. Thank you.